welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Happy Monday morning to you. It's great to have you along today. Kicking it, making it happen, starting off your day the best way we know how to do so. Let's get you woken up, excited, ready to go for the day, for the entire week. It is the second week, officially, of May. Can you believe it? It is craziness how fast these times go by. 24 minutes past the hour. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, enough about the cultural appropriations. I just think it's cute. Well done. You continue to divide while you say you're trying to unite the nation. You are the problem with society if you believe in that junk. The legislative session for the state of Kansas is officially over. The Oklahoma legislature, I believe, is wrapping up as well, if it's not done already as well. And some interesting news coming out. I do want to spend some good time today recapping the legislative session, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. I want you to do me a favor, though. I want you to go to KQAMradio.com. KQAMradio.com. The new website is up and rolling, and I am really excited. In fact, I've been working hard on this. I've never been a web designer, and I got it. We had somebody help us get it structured, but then I've been putting the content in. If you go to KQAMradio.com, you'll see one of the top tabs there called local shows or live shows, and you can find the Voice of Reason, and you can see I'm going to be having almost a daily or a weekly kind of blog deal on there. It may be long, maybe short, but I did do a little bit of a recap on the session with the good, the bad, and the indifferent, what's come out of the session, what we needed to see come out of the session, and what we need to focus on next session. So go to KQAMradio.com, go to local shows, the tab at the top, find the Voice of Reason. You can click on it and find my page. You can also find on there, by the way, the weekly guest lineups. You can find the podcasts. You can find recaps of different promotions and stuff that we're doing. It's really cool. Check it out, and I'm really excited to start kicking off the website. We'll be doing an official ribbon cutting, official release and notification about the website here very soon, but you get a little bit of a tease about what I've been working on before we actually officially announce the completion of the website. So go to KQAMradio.com, find the tab for the local shows at the top, find the Voice of Reason, you can check it out, and then you can it does work, by the way, for smartphones as well. You can go there, KQAMradio.com, and we have this. So we will be talking about some of the recap of the legislative session, good, bad, and indifferent, and mostly bad. To me, I think this session was a complete dud. I really think this complete session was absolutely a waste of time. We didn't see a whole lot of good news come out of it. We didn't see a whole lot of progression come out of it. We didn't see really anything come out, other than the fact that we just increased our spending by $1 billion. Well done. Well done. We're starting to do well as an economy slowly. Our growth here in Kansas is actually growing slower than the national average because we have high taxes here. After we did a national tax cut, then we didn't do any type of tax cut or spending cut here in Kansas. So we just increased spending. We're going to get back into another debt, and I guarantee you it's falling in just as I am the orb-glowing, all-seeing fortune teller in the political realm, and I see and foretell another round of massive tax increases next session unless we actually change the tide a little bit and elect a little bit more conservative individuals. We have some work to do. One of the good pieces of news, though, that came out was, and all the progressives, of course, are in a tizzy about it, was the adoption agencies and faith-based adoption agencies. They get to choose what families that they want to actually go through the adoption process with. And it limits that if it's a faith-based adoption agency. There are many different adoption agencies, many of them religious, many of them non-religious, and if a faith-based adoption agency chooses not to adopt a child to an LGBTQ family, that is now their prerogative with this bill. It was passed in both chambers, it's signed by the governor, and it is now going to happen. And the progressives are panicky at the fact that now we are limiting the rights of LGBTQ community members, which is just not true. Listen to the media and listen to what kind of frenzy that they're in right now, saying that we have taken away the rights of LGBTQ members in the state of Kansas. It is a lie. It is hashtag fake news, and they are completely misrepresenting the case altogether. Absolutely. They are not representing this in the proper way in any way, shape, or form, but that's the way the media usually is. But it is hashtag fake news. There are many faith-based adoption agencies, and there are many non-faith-based adoption agencies. The faith-based ones that are based on religion, get to choose. Choice. You know, what progressives usually are all about, choice. Freedom of choice, freedom to choose. or they say they're at least there for that. They get to choose what families they think a child will do very well in. And they can base that choice on the religious stance of the family, on the lifestyle of the family, for their choice to see whether it's going to be a happy home or a good family for that child. I know it's a crazy, wild concept for them with a religious standard, with a religious or moral or ethical view on this, to say, you know what, we want to make sure that the child is going to a happy home in order for them to grow up with the qualities that they feel under a faith-based agency to have. Now, if a member of the LGBTQ community, if a gay couple wants to adopt a child, this is not infringing on their right in any way, shape, or form. You know what you do? It's really crazy, I know. You go to a different adoption agency that is not a faith-based adoption agency. One that will not turn you away because of that. One that will not look at your faith or look at your lifestyle like that and still work with you through the adoption process. Shocker, you have a choice in the market. It's not a monopoly. But yet, of course, people, it's still kind of the same thing about wanting a cake because, we have to have the cake from the person that doesn't want to give it to us, so that way we can browbeat them into a way that we think, because we're all about tolerance and accepting other people's views that may differ than ours, right?
Patriotism is alive and well.
We were so excited when Donald Trump got elected that we weren't going to be bullied any longer. We weren't going to have people push us around. We're not going to apologize for who we are, and we're not going to let people walk all over us. We're not going to tolerate it because we're not the weak, spineless country that we used to be.
The voice of reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome back into it. It's great to have you along today on a Monday morning. Let's kick it off the right way. That's the way we roll. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. We'll get back to the legislative session issues in just a bit, as there is a lot to get to. The faith-based agencies for adoption was really the big one that came out last minute. The progressives all up in arms about that one. We have some Second Amendment issues. We have some tax and spending issues. We'll talk about all of that and more. By the way, that adoption agency plan went through in Kansas, did not go through in Oklahoma. That one ended up dying in Oklahoma, surprisingly. A little bit odd on that one. We'll talk about that in just a bit. But over the weekend as well, other than Cinco de Mayo, on Friday and Saturday was the National NRA Convention, the 147th annual meeting. I'm trying to find a recap on what the turnout was, because we had talked with on Friday Mark Walters, host of Armed American Radio. Usually he's there for the convention, was not able to make it this year, but we chatted with him on Friday. I want to play that interview for you, but we are anticipating, the NRA was anticipating close to 80,000 people. Mark was anticipating close to 100. They, of course, had the protesters out there as well, and that's, of course, all the media was covering was the protests of the event. But I want to play for you the interview that we had on Friday. Mark Walters, host of Armed American Radio. I fill in for him every once in a while. A great friend, great individual, talking about the NRA convention and some of the Second Amendment legislation on the national front. It is the kickoff of the annual NRA convention. Usually you're out there. You're not out there this year, but this is going to be
in many, many years.
Yeah, this is going to be one heck of a rally, Mark. This is, I think we're going to have, just like when Donald Trump got elected, with people excited about the NRA and the Second Amendment and the pro-Second Amendment legislation, there's going to be a lot of support for this one this year.
Yeah, it's going to be big. I've got a running annual bet with Crossbreed Holsters, with the boys over at Crossbreed. I've lost 5 years in a row, and I generally don't lose 5 years in a row of anything. But I have in this because I'm always overly optimistic on the crowd size. So we picked the crowd size, and then by Monday we found out exactly what the exact figure is. And I'm usually, the last 5 years I've been down, so I'm into them for 5 bottles of bourbon.
Ooh.
So we keep rolling it every year. This year I upped it from about, last year I said 90,000, and it was 86 and change.
Okay.
This year I said 95,000, and Crossbreed, actually, they always pick a lower number. That's why they've won. In this case, they went up to 100. So they believe it's going to be at 100,000, and I do too. I tend to agree with that. I think in today's political climate, being that it's at the Kay Bailey Hutchinson Center in downtown Dallas, a lot of gun lovers and a lot of angry gun lovers who are sick and tired of being called murderers by a handful of teenagers who march on Washington to take away their own rights. I think that's going to draw a crowd out of Texas, a Texas-sized crowd, if you will. I would not be surprised at all. Maybe wrong. It's been hovering around 86,000. It's been a record year every year. This one's going to be bigger, and if it's going to be a bigger record, it's going to be pushing up over 90.
Sure.
So we'll see, but it's going to be a very raucous event. You've got the vice president and the president both speaking at the event, and of course the AP, CBS News, ABC News, and the rest of them all lying because a bunch of kids called the NRA hypocrites for not allowing guns or banning guns while the president and the vice president were speaking. Of course, those kids should probably go back to school and learn a little bit more about Secret Service protection of the president, because it's the Secret Service that makes that call, not the NRA. But why waste the opportunity to disparage the NRA, put it back, because we know the press is going to say whatever we want them to say.
Exactly.
Until they got called out and they had to retract those headlines and print the truth. So it's funny how freedom works sometimes.
Oh, it's crazy how that works. No, I completely agree with you. I think we're going to have a massive turnout. I mean, we've seen the excitement here just in the state of Kansas with the rally that we had a couple of weeks ago with the KSRA convention that we had, and a great turnout for that one. People are energized, they're excited, and they're really wanting to support the Second Amendment, because I think we got a little relaxed when President Trump got into office, and you've talked about this before as well, with Barack Obama's not in anymore. We're not going to have to worry about gun regulations coming through, so we can actually take a breath. Now it's starting to hype up again after all these shootings, and again, we go back on the defensive. We rise back up and say, okay, wait a second, the fight's not over yet. I guess we better start making our voice heard again. Yeah, and you're starting to, you're hearing kids say, some of them whose name I don't even want to utter because they don't, their 25 minutes of fame should be over by now. But, talk about how we've changed this debate. Well, let's analyze that statement for a moment. No, you haven't. There is no debate. Sure.
If you knew anything about your history, you knew that debate ended December 15th, 1791, when the Bill of Rights was ratified. The debate's already been had. It's been over. The Second Amendment exists. Too bad for you. There is no debate, number one. Number two, we've changed the political climate has changed, they say. Well, no, it hasn't. Democrats still hate your guns, and Republicans, generally speaking, conservatives, love their guns. Nothing's changed there.
Sure.
The only thing that's changed is that the media is getting louder. And when just because the media gets louder doesn't mean something's changed. America has not changed overnight. 100 million gun owners haven't gone, oh, shucks, I'm over my guns. You see, it's just the media portrayal. It's the media narrative that we have to cut through. We have to cut through the fog of that and fight like hell every single day to cut through that fog. The media in this country, as you know, been listening to me almost proudly now on the air now near 10 years. We're in our 10th year. But we've been talking about this for 10 years, how dangerous this propaganda-driven media is in today's day and age, particularly when you have so many sources of it. It's very dangerous.
Here's the big question. How many protesters do you think are going to show up this weekend?
I think you'll have more this year than you had in previous years, but they will be dwarfed by 100,000 law-abiding citizens walking into that convention hall every day. And they get laughed at every time they walk by.
Sure.
I can tell you in years past, you see little groups of 8 to 10 protesters holding up a dopey little sign with that say, it has NRA, no NRA, and then it's got blood dripping off the NRA, and they stand there and hold the sign, while 50,000 families of all colors, of all socioeconomic backgrounds, of all religions, file past them and ignore them. And the mainstream media, I remember seeing NBC with a cameraman on his knees pointing that camera up at that sign, giving the great shot, while ignoring 85,000 Americans that just walked by him of every color, walk of life in this country. It's fascinating. And they will make that 8 to 10 people look with one published photo like a massive protest, and they will ignore. If you think there's going to be 100,000 protesters, you're wrong.
Oh, sure. No, absolutely not. I mean, and I'm wondering if he who will not be named, the high school student, may show up and try and lead some of that rally as well. It'd be entertaining to watch.
He is trying. He's going to show up with Alyssa Milano. We can say it. David Hogg is supposedly showing up and working with Alyssa Milano.
Of course.
So, whatever good that's going to do.
Yeah, great. Well done. Pat on the head and congratulations. You got something to write for
Hold
your
up
book.
a big resist sign, Alyssa.
That's right. President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence will both be speaking at the rally this year, which I know is always going to be excitement as well. The question that I have, though, is now that we're looking at some of the legislation and we're supporting and really focusing on the Second Amendment rights and our gun rights in the country, the question is, where is national reciprocity and when are we finally going to get this thing done?
Look, I've had Grover Norquist on the show, who is intimately involved, been following this, has talked to Mitch McConnell about this, and and I take him at his word. He has told me on my airwaves, you've heard him say it on KQAM, that Mitch McConnell was and is going to move national reciprocity by the summer, sometime in June, he pinpointed. And he stood by that. The last time I had him on the program was just a few weeks ago. Now, mind you, it was pre-Parkland.
Sure.
But, look, the Republicans have an election coming. All right? The Senate, I think we're okay, and the House looks a little bit dicey. But I think as long as the Democrats vocally choose to run on a gun control agenda, oh boy, bring it on. Love to see that. All right, I think that bodes very well for us when they choose to run on a gun grabber agenda, which it appears Nancy Pelosi wants them to do. And the mere thought of her face being on our news cameras, our news screens, flashed across every single day as holding the gavel is going to drive a lot of conservatives to the polls as well too. So I don't think this is a foregone conclusion by any stretch. Mm-hmm. But national reciprocity has got to. This would be a perfect time to move it. Mitch McConnell has said he was going to move it. Norquist has told me in no uncertain terms twice that it's going to be moving this summer, and I'm going to hold him to his word that I really do think it will move. This is the time to do it before there's any threat of that house flipping.
Well, and I guess better late than never, because, they were talking about doing it before the end of the year when it came to the same tax reform bill that Trump did by Christmas time last year, and we were talking about doing it at the same time, and we would have liked to have seen that, but then it was also being talked about being included into the omnibus bill about a month ago, and they ended up taking the Fix NICS portion out of that and including that into the omnibus, but they didn't put the state or the national reciprocity on there, which is concerning because the last time we had talked about this, really at about the beginning of the year, we were hoping that with the two together, even though we didn't care for the Fix NICS, that it would have been the compromise enough to be able to ram that through and actually get enough support to be able to make it happen.
Yeah, but the landscape changed a little bit after that, and to me and you, the landscape didn't change.
Sure.
To the swamp rats, it changed.
Sure.
Okay. Because Parkland makes no difference to me. It has nothing to do with national reciprocity. Nothing to do with national reciprocity. Bump stocks have nothing to do with national reciprocity. Fix NICS did only because the House put it together with the bill.
Mm-hmm.
All right? So there was the big debate was, should that even be in there at all? Gun Owners of America? Hell no, it shouldn't have been in there. Get it out of there. There should be no Fix NICS. And I'm in agreement with that. Fix NICS doesn't do anything but fix NICS, which is already there. It doesn't fix. You can't fix what you need to fix what you need to fix.
Right.
You can't build another law upon another law upon another law. We can't make murder any more illegal than it is already.
Right.
And there was no look. The impetus for that bill, okay, Fix NICS. If you go back and look at, he shouldn't have had that gun to begin with. Legitimately, he shouldn't have. Well, it was already a violation of the current law not to be reported to NICS.
Right.
So let's make it more illegal?
Yeah, apparently we make it more illegal, and we encourage the agencies to actually follow the law. And instead of just telling them they need to do so, we need to give them the carrot at the end of the day and say, well done, you did your job the way you're supposed to in the first place.
Right, here, a little financial carrot for you. We're going to compensate you and provide a little bit more funding to get you to do what you're already supposed to be doing.
Right. And that makes no sense to me. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me.
And to people like us, what it does is it throws up an awful lot of red flags. It says, look, why are they trying to legislate? Why are they, here comes another infringement that affects only law-abiding people.
There it is, Mark Walters, host of Armed American Radio. We sat down with him on Friday last week getting ready for the NRA convention that happened. I'm still looking. I don't see an outcome of the total turnout from last week. I did find, of course, every media outlet that covered the NRA convention, of course, said, yeah, they were anticipating close to 80,000 people. And, oh, by the way, there's a lot of protesters and people are protesting, and they made a memorial outside of the venue on all the victims of all the crimes committed by guns, not by the people, by the guns. And we hate the NRA. And look at everybody out here speaking that are out protesting against the NRA convention. And that's really all that's covering that. We may have to talk a little bit about that when we come back. Lots more of your thoughts and calls as well. It is a Monday morning. Let's kick off your week the right way. What do you say?
You're listening to the Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. Built this city. We built this city on rock and roll.
6 minutes to the top of the hour. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Happy Monday morning to you. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. The New York Times. The NRA is in Dallas, and no, you don't have to check your gun at the door. The annual National Rifle Association's meeting in Dallas. Guns are quite literally everywhere, on display at exhibition booths, on T-shirts, banners, coffee mugs. One busy corner, people stop to take pictures of a piece of a gun onto art on display, giant sculpture. But can the NRA members bring their personal guns to the event? I always love they always trying to attack us and say, oh, you have all these guns, you're for the guns, but yet you're not allowed to bring them into the venue when it comes to the convention. How hypocritical of you, NRA members and gun owners. But yet they don't understand the fact that, number one, venues have their own policy. It's not the who's hosting the event in the convention, but it's the convention rules itself. Try and go to Interest Bank Arena, even if it's a pro-gun or a conservative speaker or conservative event going on there. Try and go to Interest Bank Arena and see what you can get through that door. It's absolutely insane. Try and go to some of the venues around here and just see what you can get through. I tell you what, went to, and not knocking these, I'm just saying these are the facts of how they actually do their business. That's their prerogative. That's what they choose to do. The Cotillion went to a concert there a few months ago, and it was a metal concert. And one of the guys I saw that was in front of me going through the line, they had the security line. I don't know why it was a crazy death metal show, but they were pretty intense on some of the security there. The guy and a couple guys in front of me, they had the spiked choke collar necklaces and the spiked wristbands, and they had to take those off and put them back in their car. They couldn't even bring in a spiked collar into the venue. Interest Bank Arena, went there a couple of times over the last few months for some different shows and events and different things for the kid and for us to watch, and it was a good time. Went through the security line, and at the time I had on my camouflage hat. And if you know anything about camo hats, one of the things that a lot of people like to wear, even without camo hats, but the big fish hook, the really big fish hook that you put on there, I couldn't even put that into the venue. I had to take that off, and they actually confiscated it. They're like, you can go back and put it in your car, or we can just take it and trash it. And I didn't want to carry it back to the car at the time because the show was about to start, and we were kind of in a hurry, and so on and so forth. So ended up losing my fish hook. I was really devastated about that, by the way. They totally owe me a fish hook. But it's not about the show that's there. It's about the venue that the show's at and the rules of the venue. Now, it's even a little bit different with the NRA convention this year because the President of the United States was speaking, and that's the Secret Service rules of you're not allowed to have a firearm when you're in the venue speaking. And security, if you've ever been to an event where the President of the United States is speaking, security's pretty intense. And you don't just go through a metal detector with some, TSA workers that are just getting paid minimum wage. You go through security with Secret Service agents. And that's just what you do. I got to see President George W. Bush at his last year when I was at the Conservative Political Action Conference in Washington, D.C., and we ended up seeing him, and it was pretty rigorous security because that's just what their protocol is. You can't do anything. So that you were not allowed to take your firearm into the actual speaking convention area. There was a group, I believe it was the Boy Scouts, or what do you call them now? The Scouts USA, Scouts of America, that don't have a gender identity to them. There was a group that was actually doing check-ins for your knives, because that way you could check in your knife and they would hold it for you until you got out of the speaking venue area, and then you could get it back. So even though they call the NRA members and gun owners hypocritical for having their own convention without being able to carry firearms, try and go to any venue, whether you're in Garden City, whether you're in Wichita, whether you're in Kansas City or Topeka or Hutch or wherever you may be, go to a venue and see what they do when it comes to security. See what their protocol is, regardless of what show's there. Go to numerous different shows and try and get in with a gun or a knife or something of that sort. They're not going to let you do it. Like I said, I was at a metal concert, and they had to take off the spiked choke collars just because that may harm somebody in the mosh pit, or I don't know. I don't see them having any harm with that, but yeah, they were trying to take off certain things from your keychains, for crying out loud. Now try and carry a firearm. We had Ted Nugent come to town last fall, I believe it was, and went to the Cotillion. Couldn't carry a gun in there. Couldn't carry a firearm. For the pro-Second Amendment, Ted Nugent. Not because it was his choice, but because that was the rules of the venue. Let's learn a little bit of common sense. That's not just attack somebody just for the sake of attacking them. And that goes for both sides of the aisle, but it's predominantly progressives that just like to attack somebody just for the sake of attacking because they're not quite up to par when it comes to the common sense or the reality of what's actually happening in a situation. They try and generalize way too much so that way they can promote their agenda without actually understanding all the facts. And a lot of people just kind of fall in line with that type of hashtag fake media. This is your show. It's The Voice of Reason, hour number 2. Lots more to get to when we come back. We'll start recapping some of the legislative session from 2018 and what came out of it, good, bad, and indifferent. Stay here. This is The Voice of Reason.
Speak. It's time for Reason.
Why would we give the ability for the Supreme Court to come back and say it's not adequate enough and be able to consume as much of the budget as they possibly want to for education, and then for everybody else to get the scraps and the leftovers? Why have we not focused on the Kansas Supreme Court's constitutional amendment to limit the power of the Supreme Court? Why is that not the number one priority and the only priority that we've had when it comes to educational finance?
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, hour number 2 of The Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas on the Big Talker. 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Which, by the way, we're back up, baby. Full power, full steam ahead. We are rocking and rolling on the AM side on the 1480. I know we had some technical issues for a while, but we're back at it. We are full blown, and there's no excuse for you to have to miss this show or this station in any way, shape, or form. We're also simulcasting on KGPT TV, channel 2610 as well. Welcome aboard. It's great to have you along today on a Monday. That's right. We're setting the tone, baby, getting you excited for not only today, but for the entire week. Let's have a little fun today. Lots of big news happening in our local community and in our state of Kansas, and this is where you get the news.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
That's what I'm talking about. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, the Facebook Live feed is up and rolling as well. Facebook.com/1480KQAM. Leave a comment, ask a question. Let's blow it up. Let's get this active on social media. Let's fight the algorithm that keeps us down. We're keeping the man down, because that's what social media actually does. And speaking of that, coming up in hour number 3, I'm really excited to have our guest, Megan Barth. She's with the Media Equality Project, MediaEqualizer.com, if you want to check out the website. And she'll be talking about election cycles and social media, along with Google and all the other websites. Are they interfering with elections? Is there any type of interference with the last election? And moving forward, how does the internet, how does social media actually affect many of our mindsets when it comes to some of the elections in the United States? So we'll talk with Megan Barth with the Media Equality Project. MediaEqualizer.com is their website. We'll talk with them coming up in hour number 3. We do have some news, of course, when it comes to Sedgwick County Commissioner Michael O'Donnell. We'll talk about that in a little bit, as he's going to be in a world of trouble. And we'll get your take on Sedgwick County Commissioner Michael O'Donnell. We have the audio clips from Richard Ranzau, Sedgwick County Commissioner, as well, on saying it's unfortunate, it's terrible, totally called that one, or at least expected it, or not surprising in any way, shape, or form. We'll get your thoughts on that in just a little bit. But first, I do want to do a recap of the session. If you go to, we're so close, but I want to go ahead and start plugging this right now. KQAMradio.com. Go to the website, go to KQAMradio.com. You can see everything going on with the station itself with KQAM, but I want you to go to the tab up at the top that called Local Shows, and there's the tab on there called The Voice of Reason under the tab Local Shows, and you can see everything from our weekly guest lineup to our podcast. We will be posting the podcast on that page as well, to even the Facebook page that's linked up on there. But up at the top is the Voice of Reason's daily message. And it's our daily blog. I may do it daily. I may do it weekly. I may do it every few days, whatever I feel like and whenever there's big news. But I will keep it relatively fresh for you. But it is time now that the session is officially done. I do want to do a Thursday, hopefully Thursday this week. I want to do a recap with as many legislators in studio. We did this last year and get 2 or 3 legislators in each hour for either 2 hours or all 3 hours if we can, and do a recap. Their take on the session, what we did, what we didn't do, what we should have done, what's coming up with the election, how important it is for this election. And I'll try and do that this Thursday if we can get enough of them to sign up and actually want to do this. But I did post on there for the daily message. Again, KQAMradio.com. Under the local shows tab, you can find the Voice of Reason. And I posted on there for the Voice of Reason's daily message, the good news, the bad news, and the indifferent news. And I want to read part of this to you because as we look at some of the good news and the bad news that came out of the legislative session, overall, this session was a dud. Absolutely a dud. We didn't like this one. There's no point. I don't understand why we even went to the session this year. What did we do? What did we do? I mean, at least what did we fight, which is good news. But what did we do? Really not a whole lot. And I think that's what we need to remember here, because they're supposed to be working for you and I. They're supposed to be advancing conservatism as a constitutionalist state. Republican conservatism as a Republican majority in both chambers. Now, if we had Democrat majorities in both chambers, then I wouldn't be talking like this. But the fact that we have a Republican majority in both chambers, and what did we do? Absolutely nothing. Now, the good news is, number one, we stopped Medicaid expansion. After numerous attempts throughout the session and a last-minute desperate attempt to throw it in for the final week, it all flopped for the pro-government healthcare advocates. We stopped it. That's good news. Number two, stopping anti-Second Amendment legislation in Kansas after national shootings. Even with 0 incidents happening on university campuses this school year, the progressive gun grabbers still attempted to repeal carry on campus for whatever God knows reason, along with attaching more gun registration laws to bills originally meant for good intention with state reciprocity and lowering the age to obtain a permit to 18 years old. Thankfully, we stopped this madness. Number three, foster care adoption and adoption rights for religious liberty. It was last minute, but we were able to protect the foster care and adoption programs, which is what we needed to do. And of course, the progressives are in a complete frenzy when it comes to this, saying that we've actually attacked, we've limited the rights of LGBTQ members, how this is a violation, how they can play the victimhood now. And that's how the media's portrayed this. That's how the left-wing progressives have portrayed this, and it's just not true. It's not true in any way, shape, or form. All it says is that if it's a faith-based adoption agency, then they get to choose based on religious beliefs, based on family values, based on family traditions, based on the moral and ethical views of the family. They get to choose on where the kids actually go for adoption. End of story, period. And if you're a member of the LGBTQ community that does not agree with that, then instead of going to a faith-based agency, there are many non-faith-based agencies that you can go to and you can get just the same treatment. You can go there, and it's kind of like the private club thing. Remember on college campuses, they were attacking the private university clubs because it was a Catholic club or it was a religious club, and non-Catholics or non-religious members wanted to become a member of the club, and they were upset. They were furious at the fact that it was a closed group. It was a closed group because it was a private club for members of that religious belief. And people are upset about that. We want to be able to join. We should be able to join any group that we want to, because we don't like the fact that you close it off to us. We are the ones that should be able to walk into any club, any group, and say that we want to become a member, whether we agree or disagree or even have anything in common with the club does not matter. The fact that you will not allow us to means that we're kind of like the younger child. Remember those fights out in the yard you're playing, and the younger kid, the younger sibling wants to play, and he's not part of the group, he's not part of the friends clique, he's not part of the club, and therefore he's really upset, and he goes and runs and tells mommy and daddy because I didn't get to play with them. Remember those times? I remember those times because I was the oldest sibling. I got to actually set the rules, and I was like, no, my little brother, no, you're not allowed to play with us. Go play something else because I'm playing with my friends right now. You're not allowed to play with us. You're not part of the club, dude. And then, of course, he'd be really upset. Go to mom and dad. Andy won't let me play with them. I want to be part of the club, too. And then, of course, the parent has to come and tell you, play with your little brother. Remember those times? That's the temper tantrum that progressives like to play. They can do it on their own, by the way. They can do it all by themselves. They can be the ones that come out and say you're culturally appropriating the Mexican heritage if you are non-Mexican and you're celebrating Cinco de Mayo. You're not allowed to celebrate Cinco de Mayo. You're not allowed to drink tequila. You're not allowed to drink Tecate. You're not allowed to enjoy these adult beverages. You're not allowed to wear the sombrero. You're not allowed to listen to Mexican music. You're not allowed to do any of that during Cinco de Mayo because you are culturally appropriating them. And how dare you actually use their culture during their celebration and their holiday and you to enjoy it. But if a group on the conservative side says, yeah, you know what, we're going to kind of do our own thing and have a private group here and have a private club, and we're going to, whether it is a private organization on a college campus or whether it's a Christian faith-based adoption agency, and we want to hold the families up to a certain standard and make sure that, you know, we feel in our values that the kid's going to be going to a family that's going to be nice with those values and so on and so forth, and we're going to set those things, and we may reject somebody. How dare you? Travesty. So we're not allowed to actually have our own little private group and club, but, of course they are. And again, if you're part of the LGBTQ community, no, you're not being oppressed. No, you're not a victim. No, you're not being attacked. Go to a different adoption agency if you want to adopt a kid. End of story. Go to a non-faith-based one, and then you can go through the process, and everything's hunky-dory. So this is good news. The other piece of news that came out was, of course, according to the Topeka Capital Journal, the House. So we talked about one of the small minor pieces of good news that came out of the session was being able to write off and itemize your taxes the way that you are at the federal level. And we are trying to push that one. So we were going to not necessarily get a whole bunch of tax relief, but we're at least going to be able to itemize your taxes at the state level as you do at the federal level, which, of course, everybody was panicky about the fact we were going to lose revenue at the state level because of that, for small businesses, for individuals, and that we could itemize and deduct certain things off of our state taxes. Well, that one died in the House at about 11 o'clock Friday night. That one died. So we didn't move anything on taxes. You're not allowed to write off and itemize your taxes the way that we had thought that we were going to get to do in the state of Kansas. A minor tax relief, not huge, not big. It didn't really do anything, but at least it was going to be something, saying that we could at least start itemizing and start looking towards writing some things off and saving a little bit of tax money in the state of Kansas. It died. It got voted on 59 to 59, actually, an even vote. It did not secure the 63 votes that it needed. It died. So, sorry, I was wrong on that one. You're not even going to be able to itemize or write off certain things on your taxes. So that died as we increase our spending by $1 trillion. Overall, this session, complete dud, complete waste of time, and we didn't do anything productive in any way, shape, or form. No constitutional amendment, no cut in spending, no tax relief, nothing. We did stop Medicaid. We did stop anti-Second Amendment legislation, and we did get the faith-based agencies on adoption. That was about the most success that we had during our 3 months. Was that a waste of taxpayer money or what? Let's get your thoughts on this. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones line number one. Good morning. What's your name?
Well, this is Jim.
Jim, how are you, sir?
Well, they won't tell me. And I wouldn't want to make up my own mind on that. I might be wrong.
There you go.
I remember when the history books I read about, Will Rogers was famous for saying that freedom was in jeopardy because Congress was in session.
Sure.
And that applies to state legislatures and city councils. Most people are so busy with their own personal affairs that they don't really pay attention or get involved until things get important.
Oh, sure. Many people don't follow it at all. They usually just show up to the voting booth in November,
right,
and that's about as active as some of them get.
They haven't thought about it. I mean, it's like I was just looking online this morning, just a few minutes ago, to see if I could find any current information on the NRA attendance at the meeting.
Yeah, were you able to find anything? I couldn't find anything yet.
I haven't found anything yet. And, it's early. They may not have an actual number before noon, I'm guessing.
Sure.
I attended the NRA convention about 50 years ago in Chicago, Illinois, and it was a big convention at that time. And I was a young man. It was my first convention. I've only been to the EAA convention in Oshkosh once
Sure.
because I flew some other people up there who were attending, and I had to be there since I was the pilot. I don't get a chance to go out and just attend things. The police officers attend all kinds of things, and they're busy watching the crowd, not watching the event, if you know what I mean.
Oh, sure, sure.
So we have people who are at conventions. I heard this thing about the protesters. There were protesters that were in a group of maybe 100 people, and half of those people who were there were, not necessarily counter protesters, but just spectators. Like, she's an actress, isn't she?
Oh yeah, well, and I mean they did have a decent number of protesters out there. I mean, obviously not the NRA was anticipating close to 80,000 people to attend this event. They had, like you said, maybe about 100 protesters, and some of them actually with the signs and the activists. Some of them just wanting to spectate and see what's going on. But it compared really to small little potatoes when it came to the number of people actually showing up for the convention. Jim, I appreciate it, my friend. I want to sneak in another phone call before a break. But you're right. I mean, when legislators, when politicians are in session, then our freedoms are at stake. So the good news is that we actually stopped a lot of things. The problem is, though, is that we had a lot of work we needed to get done this year. It didn't get done. They put it off, and then they came back and said they didn't have enough time at the end, which is why I'm really frustrated with this session and the fact that we didn't do anything that needed to really get done. Like the number one focus that we were supposed to have this entire time was a constitutional amendment for the Supreme Court. That was it. That was what we were supposed to be focused on. That was what we were supposed to be worrying about, and it ended up not happening. So that is a bit of a dud on that front. Let's go back to the phones here. Line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
Scott.
Hey, Scott. What's going on, sir?
Well, when people are deciding they want to live a certain lifestyle, such as homosexuality, then they have to expect to live with the basics of homosexuality, which means that you cannot have kids when two of the same sex have a relationship. So since you know that you can't have kids, why then, to participate in homosexuality, why then would you try to adopt kids? Because that's really not part of homosexuality. It's contradicting itself.
Well, I mean, some couples do, and I know it's been kind of an increase.
I mean, it's like you want it both ways. You say, well, hey, I want to go in the house, but I don't want to go in the house. And you can't do both. You have to either go in the house or come out of the house.
You're right. Both. I mean, I agree with you. And many families that are gay, that may live together in that sense, or the LGBTQ community, they don't want children, which is fine. And I mean, all the prerogative to them. Many of them now have come out, and it's been kind of a new trend to where, for whatever reason or not, they want to, and they want to have children, even though obviously with them two together they can't. But see,
I see something else going on there. I see it being a financial thing where they're trying to actually make money off these kids, just like this Devon Hart.
Sure.
The two lesbians who was with him and his siblings, they killed the kids.
Sure. No, you're right. I mean, there's definitely
they were caught doing some type of fraud thing, because like I say, their whole motivation was getting some money.
Sure. There definitely could be some financial gain in there. I know a lot of families, both straight and gay couples, that like to become foster parents, not necessarily for just the children, but for the financial gain as well, because they get paid to take care of these children. And a lot of people do it for more the financial transaction, which is sad because you're supposed to be doing it to, take care of a child who's in a really bad place in their life at that time. But many people do it for the financial perks as opposed to actually taking care of the children. And that may have
But to me, it's like saying, "Hey, I want to be a pilot, but I don't want to go in the air when you're in a homosexual relationship."
Well,
so it's like, wait a minute, you can't have it both ways.
It is a little odd. I got to take a break. I appreciate that, Scott. I mean, I think some may see as a transaction and an opportunity in that sense. I think that some do really do want to be emotional, want to take care of a child, and some of them do want to do it for the right reason. Some of them don't. I mean, everybody's got their own thing for both gay and non-gay families that want to actually take care of children. Some do it for the financial perks. Some do it for the child, and because that they want to be emotional in that sense. But again, if you really want to, it's throwing the fit because you get a chance to throw the fit. If you want to adopt a child, you still have the opportunity to do so. You just don't go to a faith-based agency in order to do it. That's it. 25 minutes past the hour. We'll get your phone calls when we come back. Lots more to get to. This is The Voice of Reason.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
29 minutes past the hour. Bottom of the hour news coming up in just a second. We appreciate all the phone calls. Got some more on the line. Stay here. We'll start off the next segment with you as soon as we come back. I want to recap more of this legislative session, get your thoughts on this faith-based adoption agency program, allowing them to choose the families on where the kids go. Also, we have the news when it comes to Michael O'Donnell, Sedgwick County Commissioner, and what's going on with that whole debacle and situation. We'll talk about all that and more when we come back. Your phone calls kick it off. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Political talk trendy.
Oh my God, yes, more.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Doing the thing, making it happen. Welcome back in. It's a Monday morning. Let's start off your morning the right way. What do you say? Better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink, because we're just that excited on Monday morning. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Your take on a legislative recap. What happened over the session? Was it good, bad, indifferent? Was it worth it? This faith-based agencies, when it comes to adoptions against the LGBTQ community, are they now the victims in the state of Kansas because they have to choose a non-faith-based agency as opposed to a faith-based one if they maybe don't meet the standards or requirements that some actually want? Craziness. How, we have a choice, something called choosing a choice, which progressives are usually all about. But then, of course, when it goes against their narrative and people get to choose something that they don't like, then everybody's all up in arms about it. Oh, my God! We'll get your thoughts on all that and more. Let's go back to the phones here. Line number 3. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning. This is Sean.
Sean, how are you, my friend?
Doing well. I really want to comment on this faith-based law.
Sure.
But before I do that, I want to point out to your previous caller, and I mean this with all due respect, being gay, lesbian, homosexual, whatever, does not preclude you from being caring towards another human being,
sure,
whether that be an adult or a child. So the fact that, no, they can't bear children, biologically it can't happen. That's scientific fact. That doesn't mean that they can't have those skills and the emotional attachments and abilities to care for another human being, whether it be a child or an older adult or whatever.
Sure.
So I hope he understands that it's not those two issues are not mutually exclusive to each other. So
absolutely.
I say that, like I said, I say that with respect because I think maybe he's.
Well, and as I mentioned,
maybe he doesn't have a whole lot of gay friends or isn't exposed to it, and that doesn't make him a bad person. Doesn't have the opportunity maybe to know others of the gay community. So,
and as you mentioned, it's kind of like you see the bad apples in every group. It's not necessarily just because you're gay, but there's people that want to do it because, as you mentioned, that they are caring and actually have that sense of they want to be nurturing and want to take care of somebody, regardless of what kind of lifestyle that you have. And then there are others that are both within the LGBTQ community and non-LGBTQ community families that want to adopt or want to become foster parents or whatever just because of the financial gains of that as well. So there's the good and bad on both ends. You're right. Just because you're gay doesn't necessarily mean that you are non-emotional or non-caring or actually want to take care of a child in any way, shape, or form.
And by the way, on the financial aspect, if there's anybody out there that thinks that that they can raise a child based on the stipend that they get from a state agency in order to adopt or whatnot, as a father of two, one in high school, one in middle school, it doesn't even come close. It wouldn't even come close. I don't even know what the amount is that they get, but it wouldn't even come close to what it costs to raise a child. So if that's your intention, I would have to say that you are already abusing your child, because that's the only way you'll be able to accomplish it. Is if you do not feed, you don't clothe, you don't take care of your child. That's the only way you could financially make that connection.
No doubt.
Anyway,
no doubt.
Now let's talk about this legislation a little bit. Let's maybe take a step back and look at where adoption, how it traditionally was handled back in the day. It was handled by the churches. Why? Because the state didn't have a mechanism to take care of that. So the churches, because they were a centerpiece of all the communities out there, they took on that when a child needed to be taken care of, whether it be because of maybe a pregnant, non-married person or a death or something else. The church would step in, help that child find somebody to take care of them and nurture them until they could take care of themselves.
Sure.
So that was a traditional role of the church, was to take care of those that couldn't take care of themselves, and still is, by the way. So as an outcrop to that, these churches, they took care of the children, and then all of a sudden, for some whatever reason, the state decided that they need to stick their nose into the process. And I don't know the history behind how that leap took shape, but it did. And as in everything, once the state gets involved, it screws everything up. And I think it probably has in this case. So anyway, that's the reason why you have so many faith-based adoption agencies, is because that is a role of our churches, whether it be a Christian church or a Muslim church or whatever. I mean, we took care of our own first.
Sure.
And I think that now that the state stuck their nose into it, now of course they get they give money, so now they get to control the whole process because there's money involved. Now they get to put all the stipulations on, and they we're inching towards this thing. No, I know you're faith-based, but you have to give up your faith in order to follow our rules, of what we think things should be, how they should be handled. And I think it is time that we allow the professionals and those that know how this process works and they can do it efficiently, we let them do it. And if that violates their religion or their norms and their belief system, then man, who's going to take care of these children?
It reminds you of the healthcare system, doesn't it? I mean, the Catholic Church were the ones that actually had the hospitals back in the day for the longest time as well, before government got involved in that one too.
Same with the Methodists, and they have had a whole lot of hospitals here in our area too. But that aside, you're right. Nobody is saying that children necessarily can't be taken care of by a gay or maybe even a faith-based says that they don't want a Muslim family to take care of a child. Whether we agree with that whole stance or not, it's a whole different issue. But I'm not sure that we should be stepping on the belief systems of these organizations that seem to be doing a darn good job, especially in light of the way the state seems to take care of children in the state of Kansas.
I agree with you. I completely agree. It's up to the faith. If it's a private club or a private organization that's doing the adoption planning or the adoption process, and it's a faith-based group, and Sean, I appreciate it very much because you bring up some really great points, that if it's a faith-based group that says we want to hold these standards, we want to make sure the family is religious, we want to make sure that the kids are going to be growing up this way, and we're going to help this, and we've been very efficient in doing so, and that the results been very successful, and so on and so forth, that we're going to hold those standards. And if you don't like those standards, if you don't think that, come on, we know that a lot of individuals say, well, don't try to enforce your morals and ethics onto me, so go somewhere else. You have the choice. The choice is there. There are faith-based and non-faith-based organizations, and you can choose. You have that choice. on where you want to go. But like the typical progressive is that when you have choices because there are different options for you, then you go to the one to where it's least likely for you to be accepted or invited in welcomingly or warmingly or whatever, and then you throw the fit because how dare that you try and actually try and make me the victim, and how dare you actually come after me in that sense. So instead of just going about our own business, doing our own thing, then of course they need to throw the fit about it. And that's what we're seeing right now with the media and with many progressives in the area. Let's take another phone call before we take a break. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, Andy, this is Gary.
Gary, what's going on, sir?
Well, I couldn't hear the whole thing, but I think I'm going to be echoing the previous caller. It's about the choice or the lack thereof. I get sick to my eyeballs with the government telling us what we're allowed to do. It's insane, and you know, and the one caller with the attitude of, well, if you don't like homosexual adoptions, you just don't understand, or you're not a really nice person, and you know, if you don't accept me, you're not a nice person. There's a bad side to that too.
Well, there is, and again, I mean, just imagine if we did force everybody to accept one way, then of course the faith-based agencies would go to the wayside because you're not allowed to do that. We have according to the progressives, it would be a choice as long as you choose this way. And that would be their choices as long as you accept everybody regardless of what you believe. Well, I don't believe in that. Well, then we need to shut you down and get rid of you because you're intolerant and you're a bigot and you're a jerk, and we're not going to allow you to actually promote that idea. But if we say, oh, we accept it other way, and let's say, for example, it was flipped the other way and say that we're not going to allow anybody because of a separation of church and state. I know this argument's going to come up somewhere. And say, look, it is a government-run program when it comes to adoption. We're not allowed to have government involved with religion in any way, shape, or form, so therefore it violates the separation of church and state. This isn't true, but I can see this argument trying to be made of the fact that the adoption process is going through where the government's owning the child right now. The private individual wants to own the child, so it's a government entity trying to do the adoption process. You're not allowed to have faith-based ones in there because there's a separation of church and state. So therefore, we need to now get rid of all of the faith-based agencies and have all government, secular, non-faith-based agencies. Then the progressives would be all happy because then there'd be plenty of choices and plenty of options, and there would be no bigotry in any way, shape, or form. And they would be happy because they've now silenced anybody with a religious view that wants to hold a faith-based process. And therefore, they would be extremely happy because they've shut down the choice and shut down the option while they're saying that now we're all happy and living together happy and harmoniously. And that would be their argument.
Look what the homosexual community has done to the Boy Scouts, and
a private club.
Yeah, it's a private club, and it's just like telling a bar they can't sell liquor or beer or whatever,
or a certain type. Yeah, you're allowed to have your plethora of 5 different types of whiskeys, but you're not allowed to have this type or this one because they've made some type of bigoted remark in the past. So therefore, they're not only is it the choice of the bar owner to actually carry that type of liquor, but you're just forcibly not allowed to carry that when you can carry all the others and have all the choices you want as long as you don't choose that one, because if you do, then you're a bigot.
Yeah, and I just wish the government would get out and private interest would stop trying to force their way upon everybody else. Let the free market work itself out. Like you said, there are agencies who don't have a problem with homosexual adoption, so
go to that one. Go to that one. That's what it is. Gary, I love it, my friend. I appreciate it very much. By the way, I just created an argument you're going to see now in the media. You're going to see when it comes to some of the progressives, you're going to see this argument come up, separation of church and state, and therefore the faith-based agencies are a violation. Even though this has been going on way before the government was even involved in this in any way, shape, or form, now they're going to say that it is controlled by the government, and we need to have a separation of church and state. Now you're going to see that argument pop up. I guarantee you, I just gave them the fuel. It's an absurd, ridiculous argument, but they see any opportunity to try and change the dynamic of the discussion, and that's going to be the way that they're going to go. I foresee it with my political fortune-telling, my friend, because I know exactly what they're going to be doing, because now apparently I'm Dracula. And and that's what they're going to do. I guarantee you, separation of church and state argument, it's coming. 48 minutes past the hour. This is the Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. 6 minutes to the top of the hour. It's great to have you along. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, as usual, it is a Monday morning. This portion of the Voice of Reason brought to you by the AARP, whether it's the Fraud Watch Network, the Retirement Calculator, getting involved in the community. It does not matter. AARP's got you. AARP.org/KS for the state of Kansas if you want to join and check them out. Maren Turner back on the line with us. Maren, how are you this Monday morning?
Good morning. I'm great. Just enjoying all this sunshine.
I tell you what, it's beautiful. I'm starting to not glow in the dark anymore and actually get a little bit of a tan, so I'm enjoying that.
That sounds like fun.
Exactly. There we are. Coming up, I know my wife, you have fueled my wife to do some major spring cleaning and do some cleaning out of the cabinets and all of the paperwork that we've had and like the 10 years worth of electric bills and stuff that we've been storing. The shred event is coming up very soon. We got to remind everybody, when and where is that going to be again, and what's all the details about the upcoming AARP shred event?
Sure. We have an upcoming shred-a-thon coming up on May 14th at Dillon's, and it's at the Dillon's located at 135th and Maple. We know that, like you said, people are spring cleaning, and it's the end of the tax season, so I know people are looking for ways to destroy unneeded paperwork that could help crooks identify their identity. So we hope that people will come out, bring 2 to 3 boxes full of paperwork that has sensitive information on it that you'd like to shred. We sure would like to help you get rid of that.
Very good. It's a week from today, which means everybody's got about a week left to try and start wrapping that up. You said 2 to 3 boxes worth of goodies. Now, we get to include anything from maybe past tax returns, utility bills, all that good stuff. Remind us again of kind of what the time frame is of what we need to hold on to and how long we need to hold on to certain things.
Well, there's some things that you can shred immediately, like your sales and cash withdrawal slips from your ATM, paid credit card statements, utility bills, things like that. You can destroy those right away. Within a year, you can destroy your pay stubs, bank statements. And if you have some undisputed medical bills, it's okay to go ahead and shred those. After about 7 years, you can destroy canceled checks, your W-2, 1099 forms. Expired passports and driver's licenses, old insurance policies, things like that. But there are some things you should never shred, like your original birth certificate, your marriage certificate, your Social Security card, divorce decree, and death certificate, things like that. So we're hoping that people will come out and bring some sensitive information that crooks can use to defraud you. We're not saying that shredding should be your only defense against ID theft, but it's really a good opportunity to destroy some items that crooks could use to hurt you.
Sure.
Now, while people are there, we're going to give them an opportunity to enter a drawing for your own personal shredder you can take home. There are basically 3 types of shredders. One is just a strip cut, which is kind of useless because a crook can take whatever it is you've shredded from a strip cut and reconfigure your document. Then the next level of security would be a cross cut, which is a little bit more secure. But then the micro cut will cut your documents up into confetti. There's no way anybody's going to be able to reconfigure that document. And so we're going to be offering people an opportunity to draw or a micro-cut shredder, which is really fantastic.
Very good. I love it. It's going to be the shred event next Monday, May 14th, and that's coming up very quickly. So finish up your spring cleaning and head out there. It's real quick. We got about a minute or left so as well. But along with that shred event, I know it's summertime. It's going to be things are going to be happening pretty quickly. The legislative session's over, but some events coming up, I'm sure, in the community as well, with maybe the movies for grown-ups and some other things that people can get involved with as well, correct?
Yes, there will be a number of things people can get involved with, and we invite them to call us and check in on our website. But I also want to make sure people know that we're asking them to bring food items next week to the Shred-a-thon. With school out, a lot of kids won't be able to eat breakfast or lunch at school. So the food bank really needs some items such as peanut butter, cereal, canned fruit, meals in one like ravioli and chunky soups and beefy mac. So we're inviting people to also bring out a non-perishable food item as part of the Shred-a-thon. And again, we have a lot of activities coming up this summer. We hope people will check in with us. Just call us at 1-866-448-3619 or log onto our website, www.aarp/org/KS. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I love it, Marin Turner. I appreciate it very much there with the AARP.
It's time for Reason.
Why would we give the ability for the Supreme Court to come back and say it's not adequate enough and be able to consume as much of the budget as they possibly want to for education, and then for everybody else to get the scraps and the leftovers? Why have we not focused on the Kansas Supreme Court's constitutional amendment to limit the power of the Supreme Court? Why is that not the number one priority and the only priority that we've had when it comes to educational finance?
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 3. The Voice of Reason broadcasting live across the entire Mid-America region here in the heartland of America in Wichita, Kansas on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 of the FM side, KQAM. By the way, we are back up, rocking and rolling full power on the AM side, 1480. We are back up, had some issues. We got them fixed, addressed, I believe so, and we are back up and rolling at the full power for the station. So check it out, 1480 KQAM, and that way you can listen on the AM dial. We are on Facebook Live feed right now. We are on the simulcast of KGPT TV, channel 2610. We are just everywhere that you could possibly think of for a show here on the local basis. Welcome in, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to check out the Facebook Live, we have a lot of people tuning in right now. You can go there, facebook.com/1480 KQAM. Like it, share it, leave a comment, ask a question, say good morning, call me a jerk. I don't really care what you do on there, but there's a lot of great news. It is a Monday morning. It's time for us to get pumped up, ready to go, woken up, ready to go for the day, not just for today, but for the entire week. We're going to carpe diem all over this place, baby. We're going to have to clean it up with a daggone mop.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here.
There it is, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. I mentioned this in the first hour, but I enjoyed my Cinco de Mayo. Our neighbors, they are Mexican, they are Hispanic, our right next door neighbors. And Cinco de Mayo, now I think it was a birthday party along with the Cinco de Mayo, but they had a live band out there. They had a whole stage built in their backyard. They had the strobe lights going. They had some smoke machines going. It was a nutso party. Our little tiny street that we live on, our quiet little tiny street, they had close to 50 cars there. There's close to 100 people in their backyard. Now, we have a tree line that actually blocks us from actually viewing their backyard. But we could see it, we could hear it. It went on way late into the night, and that's okay. You know what? I enjoyed it. I sat in my backyard. I listened to their music. I had no idea what they were saying, but I was enjoying it. I had a little bit of a few drinks of tequila myself, and I had some chips and salsa. And apparently, according to the latest stories, is that I was coached by doing that, by celebrating by default with them. Because it is a celebration. It's a way to party. It's a way to enjoy. It's a Saturday night, and I just wanted to do it. And why not do it with my festive neighbors as well? By doing that, apparently, I was culturally appropriating them, and therefore, according to the media, I should be ashamed of that, and I should apologize for culturally appropriating somebody else with different traditions than me. And I laugh, and I say, yeah, that's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So you can say that all you want to. You can try and attack me for it. You can try and say that I was culturally appropriating, but this is what I have to say to you.
We don't care anymore.
Yeah, there you go. That's pretty much what I have to say about that. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. It was a beautiful weekend. It was really great weather, and it was a lot of fun. So hopefully you got to go out and enjoy as well. I do want to touch on this before we run out of time. At the bottom of the hour, we're going to be talking with Megan Barth. She is with the it's a Media Equality Project, MediaEqualizer.com. You can check her website out, talking about the elections and how much social media and the interweb have on curbing people's opinions of issues and candidates going into an election and how we begin to fight that in that sense. So we'll talk with Megan Barth coming up in about 20 minutes from now. But I haven't had a chance to talk about this today. If you want to chime in on this, you're more than welcome to do so. But Sedgwick County Commissioner Michael O'Donnell getting under heat, and I don't know if he's been arrested yet. I don't know if he's about ready to, but the charges coming out with him on bank fraud, on wire fraud, on money laundering, on a lot of some pretty hefty charges that could really devastate him and put him away for a long time. Now, some of these have been an open investigation for a while. As you know, there's been that the underground gambling case that's been investigated by the FBI. It's been going on for a while, and he was potentially a part of that one as well, with some of the allegations that came out saying that he may have been involved in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if that has anything to do with it or if that just started some of the investigation, and then they ended up finding this thereafter. But we've learned about the U.S. District Court action today, and not only what the U.S. District Court has shared publicly. According to Sedgwick County Commissioner Chairman David Dennis, as elected officials, we continue to monitor and consult with the proper authorities about any implications to Sedgwick County, while also recognizing due process is important for any citizen. Sedgwick County will support anything the U.S. Attorney's Office needs or requires during their process. Richard Ranzau, Sedgwick County Commissioner, has come out as well and said that it's devastating, it's heartbreaking, but at the same time, it's really not shocking compared to some of the back and forth that Richard Ranzau and Michael O'Donnell have done over the last few months, if you pay attention to that in any way, shape, or form. But Michael O'Donnell is accused of giving false information in 5 reports he emailed to the State Ethics Commission in 2016 and 17. The U.S. Attorney said at issue are a series of transactions that alleges Michael O'Donnell falsely represented as payments made for campaign-related expenses. Now, if you know anything about campaign finance laws, you're not allowed to use campaign finance law for personal expenses. You cannot move money from a campaign account into your personal account. You're not paying yourself to run for office. You're not allowed to do that. That's against campaign finance laws. You're allowed to pay other people. You're allowed to pay for things involved with the campaign, but you cannot write yourself a check from the campaign account to yourself. And there's more intricacies in there, but that's kind of the basics of where it's gone. So there's been some workaround on that Michael O'Donnell allegedly has tried. And here's some of the examples. A $1,000 check from Michael O'Donnell wrote from his Michael for Kansas campaign account to a person identified as CR. The indictment alleges that after CR cashed the check, then O'Donnell turned around and deposited $1,000 cash into his personal checking account. Now, I worked in banking before, and many times individuals who are running for office, as I did have a couple of accounts at the bank that I worked for, a few individuals were running for office and had their personal accounts and their campaign accounts at the same bank, because it's very easy to be able to do transactions, because a lot of people can transfer money from their personal accounts to their campaign account if they're putting more money into it. You can self-fund yourself, but you just can't pay yourself unless you're paying yourself back afterwards, and all. There's a whole other rules there. But as a banker, you're taught to try and have these red flags kind of come up. And, sometimes if you see Michael O'Donnell, or if you look through the accounts, or you see the different account, you see, okay, here's the campaign finance account, and there's a check going out for $1,000, and then you turn around and you see him coming in with cash, depositing into his personal account, $1,000, then many bankers may see that as a red flag and be able to report that. I don't know if that's how that got started, or if it wasn't caught, and it was just during the investigation where they started seeing these trends. But as a banker, those types of red flags you're taught to try and see as the daily transaction, especially if you see individuals who are frequent customers and you have some bit of a relationship with them, which they encourage as a banker to have a good relationship with your client. So that way you can kind of see the trends and the habits of how they actually use their finances, especially if they have numerous business accounts, numerous campaign accounts, that sort of thing. So that way you can see the trends And that way you can see what's normal activity and what's not normal activity. We actually had to call or at least report it to federal officials on somebody who was using get this, it was a child savings account. It's a children's savings account. It's free, and they didn't have any other accounts with us, no personal checking account, no savings accounts, no nothing. All they had was their child's savings account, and they would get wires in there for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. And then a couple of days later, it would be gone, and it would be transferred somewhere else. And then a couple of days later, another $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 wired into this child savings account. And they were really great individuals. And they come in and say hi, and they chat with us, and they talk to us, and they were from New York, and they kind of had the New York accent. They were kind of the sly ones, but they were great. They were a great couple. But we were chatting with them, and we kind of feel them out, and that was part of our job as well, just to kind of feel out, okay, what's going on here. So we just do it in small talk and just chat with them about what they were using their account for and whether we can better serve them with a different account. We mentioned to them, hey, you got a lot of wires coming in and going out with tens of thousands of dollars. Savings accounts aren't normally for that type of transaction. Can we get you set up with an actual checking account? So that way it's actually a little more beneficial to you. And no, we have our accounts elsewhere. This is for our child savings account. We just dabble in the stock market a little bit. And, we just play around with it. And whatever we get in there, then we move in here. And that way we can, save up a little bit for our kids and so on and so forth. Well, that right there put up the red flag. We ended up reporting and come to find out that they've been accused many times before in New York, and this was in Colorado, mind you. They were accused in New York, and they were actually on the run, per se, from federal officials because they had done numerous different types of bank frauding, and they have cheated the stock market, and they did a lot of different dirty things, and they were just not allowed to be doing it. So they were using their kids' social security number to actually have an account open to be able to play in the stock market, and they would get money in and take money out and be doing all these different kinds of weird transactions under their kid's name with their social security number. And they ended up getting in trouble for that, and the account was shut down shortly afterwards. So those are the types of things you're supposed to be looking forward to when you're a banker, and these are the types of things that are supposed to be somewhat of red flags during that time. Another $1,000 check Michael O'Donnell wrote from Michael for Kansas campaign account to a person identified as JD. After receiving the check and after cashing it, allegedly wrote a $1,000 personal check to O'Donnell. O'Donnell deposited a $1,000 check into his personal account. A total of 12 checks from Michael for Kansas campaign account. O'Donnell had wrote to a friend with a total of just over $5,600, and then turned around and deposited it into the personal account. 3 checks O'Donnell wrote from his Michael for Sedgwick County account to DJ, totaling $750. 6 accounts O'Donnell had written for Michael for Kansas account to a friend identified as JM, totaling $2,100. So a lot of the account fraud going on there, allegedly. And we'll see what kind of charges come out of that. Now, for the punishments for these, they can be relatively severe. Wire fraud. Each account of wire fraud, if any of that was going on, up to 20 years in federal prison with a fine up to $250,000. Bank fraud, which is what he was doing, writing the checks and depositing at somebody else, doing the same thing, back and forth, all over the place, up to 30 years in prison for each one and a fine up to $1 million. And money laundering up to 20 years and a fine up to $500,000. So some pretty hefty fines, some pretty hefty punishments. We'll see if anything comes out of this or not. But if this is true, and if this is the case, then we may be having to look for a new county commissioner relatively soon. Now, he does not have to be forced out of the county commission. He needs to resign himself before he actually gets booted off, sort of thing. Unless, of course, he is rounded up and arrested, then they'll probably force him out in that sense. But all the county commissioners, as far as I'm aware of, are requesting that he step down by himself before they have to take action elsewhere, and we'll see whether he does or not. But this is going to get very interesting very, very soon. But if all these come to fruition, then he could be in a lot of trouble for a very long time, and the name Michael O'Donnell may not be heard for a long time if all this actually comes true. 20 minutes past the hour. We'll get your thoughts and calls on this and a heck of a lot more. As things are happening in our local community, we need to start cleaning this up. If dirty politics and dirty money and dirty things are happening, then that's something that I believe needs to be exposed. 316-721-8255. This is the Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
26 minutes past the hour. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, making it happen today on a Monday morning. It's an honor to have you along. 316-721-8255. Let's go right to the phone, shall we? Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Morning, Andy. It's Joe.
Joe, what's going on, my friend?
Just another beautiful day here, brother. I'm blessed. You know that.
Living the dream every day.
Yeah, every day. Hey, does the controversy not surprise anybody? I mean, this guy has been followed by controversy since the first day he got into political office. So it doesn't look, I mean, this isn't like shocking. I mean, it would be totally different if one of the other commissioners with all these charges, because most of them don't have this kind of a follow-up. But this guy has done pretty much a lot of Slim Shady stuff just to become a commissioner.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just not shocking.
You're right. Now to that extreme is a little bit crazy, because I mean I've followed the stories about Michael O'Donnell, and he was a state senator or even past a former state senator when the whole case about providing beer to underage individuals during a party and riding in the van where there's a whole bunch of alcohol in a non-alcohol area and all these other things, and they were small and minuscule, and I overlooked that stuff because I don't really care. You know, should you obviously provide alcohol to underage individuals? No, especially as an elected official when the limelight's on you, because people know who you are. Kind of not the brightest, smartest thing to do if that's what he did, but I overlooked that stuff because it's stupid. It's non-political, it's non-issues, and I don't really focus on it. This, however, is something completely taken to a whole nother level, but if there's been consistency of all the small little things, then sometimes that does show the character of an individual, of what they may be capable of behind the scenes that we don't know of.
That's it, exactly. Like you just said, it's all those little things that no one was like, who cares? It's not a big deal. But when you start adding them up, it adds up to one big deal. And then this obviously is a huge deal if it's all true, which, you know, I don't know if it is or isn't. That's for the courts to decide. But
sure, he's
innocent until proven guilty. But it sure seems like there's an awful lot of cards stacked against him in this deal. So just kind of I just, as a person, I just don't see it as shocking, because there's so much controversy that has followed this guy from day one. It's just not even funny.
Well, and it's sad because, I mean, Michael O'Donnell was politically a more conservative-minded oriented individual. So, you know, I supported him in the run for the county commission. You know, we talked with him. We talked with him when he first got into the county commission. Not much more since then, but we talked to him when he was a state senator as well, and some of the stuff that he's done. And he had some conservative, like-minded, ideals. So, of course, now there's going to be the mainstream attack locally about how conservatives do dirty things and how we need to get conservatives out of there. And I don't want to start going down that road because that's unfortunate. And even as Richard Ranzau had mentioned, that he supported Michael O'Donnell in the county commission race as well. But as soon as he got into office, then we started hearing talks about slush funds to have accounts to be able to do whatever you want to without being on the books. And then you start seeing some of the weaseliness, and then they started really butting heads at the county commission meetings. And now this comes out, and Richard Ranzau really saying it's not really a shocker. It's sad, but it's not really a surprise, because, you know, we kind of knew the kind of character that this individual had. So it's really heartbreaking that we'd see that in our local community.
Yeah, it is. And Ranzau's, he's right to be mad about this thing, because he did support him and was trying to push. He thought he was a good guy, and, you know, as we all did, but then the truth came out. It's kind of like being pregnant. Sooner or later, you're going to find out about it, you know.
You can't hide that one. That's right.
You can't hide that one. So, anyway, thanks, brother. Have a great and blessed day.
I love it, Joe. Take care, my friend. Always a pleasure there. 316-721-8255. You're right. It is kind of like being pregnant. Eventually, the truth comes out, and you're not able to hide it. And then you got to go back to the significant other and say, we need to talk. Now this is the county commission coming back and saying, yeah, you know, Sedgwick County and everybody in Sedgwick County, we need to talk. Got some issues going on. Now what do we got to do about it? Guess we better take responsibility on that one rather than sweep it under the rug and suck it out with a dry cleaner or something. I don't know. Bottom of the hour news coming up. Megan Barth. I'm not advocating for that, by the way, but of course there's going to be talks about trying to make that happen. When we come back, Megan Barth is going to be joining us. This is The Voice of Reason.
Don't take money, don't take fame.
Spreading the love on a daily basis.
And I will always love you.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
There it is, my beautiful singing voice, apparently. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Wrapping up the program today, 36 minutes past the hour, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, we can continue that discussion with the wire fraud, money laundering, bank fraud that's happening with our Sedgwick County Commissioner. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on in the program, but I want to shift gears for a little bit. This has been an ongoing discussion, and if you remember a few weeks ago, we covered the big hearings that happened in Washington, D.C. with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and the interference that it potentially had with not only the elections, but then with censoring certain political groups and how the algorithms are all set up. And it's a scary ordeal. And if you notice, the more you start searching different topics and start trying to educate yourself, because that's what it's all about, right? Educating yourself on issues or the history of voting records on politicians or whatever it is. When you search things, maybe you've noticed that maybe the content is just a little bit different. If you actually Google the definition of terms, for example, fascism back in the day used to actually not say anything about right-wingism. It just used to talk about this style of government that fascism actually was and what it actually entailed. Nowadays, if you Google it, then it comes up and it says that it's part of the right wing. And that's not the case in any way, shape, or form. That's another discussion that we can have a little bit later. But the definitions are changing a little bit. So your knowledge, if you try and research things online, is changing a little bit. But it also is affecting us either intentionally or unintentionally when it comes to elections and our mindset on different campaigns and candidates and the issues themselves. And talk about all that and more, I'm really excited to have on the show. She's the co-chair of the Media Equality Project and spokesperson for MediaEqualizer.com. It's Megan Barth that's on the line. Megan, thanks so much for joining us. Good morning.
Anytime, Andy. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thank you for coming on here. First off, talk a little bit about your take before we get into, as a whole, how the media and how online has changed. Talk about your take on the whole hearings that we saw with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and the algorithms that they set up and the interference or the involvement that they had with influencing people for elections. From your perspective in monitoring and viewing this, was that actually going on, and what type of response do you think, or how much do you think that it affected the elections last year?
Well, it was really political theater. That's really what this hearing was. I was glad to see that Ted Cruz actually asked some very pointed questions, and that's really the testimony that we have to look at very closely. Mark Zuckerberg was thrown into the national spotlight in a congressional hearing because he helped Cambridge Analytica, who helped Donald Trump as far as data mining and data scraping. Well, that was nothing new because in 2012, that's exactly what the Barack Obama campaign did with the help of Google's Eric Schmidt. The Barack Obama campaign had something called the Cave. It was in Chicago at his campaign headquarters, and the Cave was comprised of data engineers. And these data engineers worked very closely with Eric Schmidt. And who gathers more data? Google. Mm-hmm. So the fact that, Mark Zuckerberg did basically the same thing with Cambridge Analytica that the Barack Obama campaign did with Eric Schmidt, and they were at the time referred to the New York Times as digital masterminds. Well, I guess that is no longer the fancy as long as Donald Trump is being helped with data. They're no longer referred to as digital masterminds. They must be dragged in front of Congress, and Cambridge Analytica must lose its entire business and go bankrupt. But this is the weaponization that we see that large tech companies like Google and like Facebook have been empowered to do specifically against conservatives when it comes to censorship. And both Google and Facebook have outwardly admitted that they've changed their algorithms in order to push forward quality journalism, which has suppressed conservative speech, much like Diamond and Silk. I mean, how is it that Facebook can determine that Diamond and Silk are threats or dangers to the community, but on the other hand have Islamic jihadists on Facebook calling for jihad? Mm-hmm. That type of speech isn't censored. Only conservative speech is censored. But Mark Zuckerberg says, oh, no, we don't call it censorship. It was just an enforcement error. Okay, sure. Well, you can call it whatever you want, but the bottom line is that it's censorship. And Ted Cruz made a very good statement. He said, are you a neutral platform? Now, What this means is Google, Twitter, Facebook, all of these social media enterprises, monopolies, if you will, claim protection under government regulation by claiming they're private companies that are on a neutral platform. Well, their outward admittance and statements proves that they are not a neutral platform.
Sure.
So this is where government comes in, and there will be some of these free marketeers on the conservatives. Oh, but you're asking for more regulation. Well, they're already regulated, but they're regulated according to the statement that they're a neutral platform, and they simply are not.
Well, what boggles the mind is I remember that question very vividly from Ted Cruz, and I applaud him very much as you did for actually asking that. And the response, I had to chuckle at, because Mark Zuckerberg said, well, our agency and everybody that works on this is from Silicon Valley, which is a very left-wing progressive area, and therefore that kind of fell under the oopsie, we'll get this fixed and corrected, but we shouldn't have been censoring them even though we were, sort of thing. And you would think as the owner of a private company who is getting heat of the fact that he censors certain political groups one way or another, or a certain political ideology, that you would have your company say that, you know what, just like any other company as a private individual, when you work in, you can have any political belief you want to, but as soon as you punch into the clock and start working for the day, then you work and represent the company, and regardless of what your political views are, that's not how you express yourself in the workplace. And he didn't say anything about that. All he just said was, well, yeah, people there in Silicon Valley are very liberal, so that's why conservatives predominantly have been censored a little bit more so on my platform. Really? And you would tolerate that from your employees?
Right. And he also made the statement like, well, we don't ask about political beliefs when we're hiring. Well, of course you don't. That's against the law. But if the actions of your staff or the actions of your company are censoring speech based on their political views, you have a problem. It's funny. Campbell Brown, she used to be a part of the Hillary Clinton campaign and also a journalist. She outwardly admitted, and she's now part of Facebook's news media effort, where basically she said, she was a former anchor. She told attendees at a recent technology and publishing conference that Facebook would be censoring news publishers based on its own internal biases. Mm-hmm. The quote from Campbell Brown is, this is not us stepping back from news. This is us changing our relationship with publishers and emphasizing something that Facebook has never done before. It's having a point of view, and it's leaning into quality news. We are, for the first time in the history of Facebook, taking a step to try to define what quality news looks like and give that a boost. Sure. Well, who determines what quality news is? And who determines what that looks like? Well, it is the left-wing zealots out of Silicon Valley and the tech titans who predominantly vote for, financially support progressive candidates like Hillary Clinton and progressive news organizations like the New York Times.
Sure. Here's the question for you, and I've been torn on this one, coming from the conservative-minded, limited government ideals, is that, in the private sector, many businesses are able to kind of make the choices that they want to. And if Facebook wants to go down the road of progressivism and start limiting conservative values and messages and the videos like Diamond and Silk or messages from conservative shows. I know Joe Pags, we're an affiliate of Joe Pags show, and he says that he gets censored quite a bit on Facebook as well. And if they choose to go down that road, what's the best response that we should have? Should we go up and try and fight them to open that back up and make it more open for every political view? Or is it just saying, it's the business's choice to do so, they're going to limit, infringe, and kind of isolate their usership, and that we should just find another alternative, and then we can start dividing ourselves on different social platforms that would accept us?
Well, it's a really sad statement where we have to go find free speech platforms, especially when these platforms, especially when these platforms proclaim themselves to be neutral. Mm-hmm. The one thing that we can do is treat them as a non-neutral platform, which then would open them up to lawsuits of libel.
Sure. That is very true.
So they can't have it both ways. They can't claim and that was the point I was trying to make at the top of the show. They can't claim to be a neutral platform, but then openly express and also manipulate their algorithms to suppress conservative points of view in their efforts to promote quality journalism, as Campbell Brown said, who now works for Facebook, with a point of view.
Sure.
If you have a point of view, you are no longer a neutral platform.
Exactly. You're right. You can't have it both ways. Do you think that we're going to see anything come out of this hearing? Will they come down on Facebook at all, or was it just for the show to say that they're looking into it, and then we're not going to see anything come out of it in the end?
I would say it's the latter. However, why is Google so quiet? It's because they are the worst. They are the worst when it comes to data gathering and data sharing and monopolizing on that data, in so much so they can influence voters through the manipulation of search results. Mm-hmm. And there is a study by Epstein out of Canada that shows the search manipulation effect, whereby you can have a 50-50 split in undecided voters, and based on the search results that Google provides you through how they manipulate the search results data, it can flip those voters 80% to a 90-10 outcome. Wow. So if you Google Barack Obama, for example, I used to, and I would get a variety of sources, everything from Zero Hedge to New York Times.
Sure.
Well, now on the main landing page of the results, all I get are their top 10 progressive publishing partners. And that would be, NBC, ABC, CBS, New York Times, Vox, The Atlantic, even Mother Jones will come up.
You got to go 2 or 3 pages deep in order to get anything substantial.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
And this is financially hurting conservative publications. And this is also another tactic. By moving those search results down 3 to 4 pages, they aren't getting the traffic click-through. They aren't getting the eyeballs. They aren't getting the financial reward from Google, which, because Google owns I believe it's AdSource or an ad company, if those appear on the New York Times page and people click, Google gets a revenue and New York Times gets a revenue. So it's a financial sharing mechanism that Google now is awarding their progressive partners in their quality news journalism.
Sure. And that's got to be a violation right there by itself, which is very troubling. So the question is, we got a few minutes left. We're talking with Megan Barth, the co-chair of the Media Equality Project, along with MediaEqualizer.com. I know you guys are working on trying to fight this. The question is for us here in Kansas, for the ones that just use these products, the ones that are just trying to educate ourselves on the issue to learn how to fight it, it seems like a very hefty project for someone like us to be able to try and fight something like this. What can we do?
And I just want to correct the record. It's Google's DoubleClick, not AdSource they own, but it's all about splitting the revenue with publishers. So What can you do? You can go to MediaEqualizer.com. You can donate to us. We don't have the Media Matters George Soros budget, but every little dollar helps. We will continue to highlight this bias. We highlight the bias in the mainstream media, and we work every day in order to bring the truth to the masses. We have a Stop the Scalpings group on Facebook, which was started to save Sean Hannity's voice a year ago. And then that's our activist group. We're now 110,000 people strong. Yeah, it stinks that we have to use Facebook as the platform, but that's where we started. And in order to migrate Stop the Scalpings, 110,000 people over to MeWe or some other platform is a daunting task in and of itself.
Sure.
So I encourage, if you're an activist, go to Stop the Scalpings on Facebook or go to our website, MediaEqualizer.com, and join the movement.
It's a great opportunity for us to be able to fight some of this that seems like it's out of our hands, because we're the users here just trying to go about our business. And you're right, when we Google something, we go to a website, we go to Facebook, it's very difficult to get some of the stuff that we know is completely incorrect or that's actually correct, and we see everything that's incorrect right in front of us, and we have to look a little bit deeper, taking the extra step. And it's a bit frustrating. Megan Barth, co-chair of the Media Equality Project, MediaEqualizer.com. MediaEqualizer.com is the website. You can go check that out and support them. Megan, thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to get you back on the show later.
Anytime. Happy to do so.
Appreciate it very much there. That's Megan Barth right there, MediaEqualizer.com. Let's wrap it up. Take one more break. We'll get your phone calls when we come back. 10 minutes at the top of the hour. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Just a few minutes to the top of the hour. If you want to jump in, 316-721-8255. We'd love to hear from you. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? And we've talked about the media, the social media many times before, and about how they've tried to limit us, obviously. And I've made the case of, well, you know what? They're a private business. If they want to do that, that's stupid because you're kind of marginalizing your viewership and your users. But at the same time, if you choose to do so, you're a private business. All the power to you. But it really takes it into perspective when you're talking about not only Facebook, but like Google and some of these other companies that do the same thing. And when it's, again, you got to remember in politics, it goes back to the money. Where's the money? Where's the trail of cash? Where's the money coming from? And when you especially Google something and you click the link to the article and it's all about the advertisements and the viewership and they're at the top of the Google page and you click on them, then Google gets the money and the page or the website or the company gets the money that you're going to, and they kind of split it together. If they're saying that it's just random and you just come up with everything and a plethora of everything and you get to click and choose whatever you want to, and now they're only putting progressives on there, they're openly choosing financially to have liberal progressive websites be supported over conservative websites. And then you start seeing the fact that a conservative outlet will be 2 or 3 pages deep on Google, which means most people usually don't go that far into Google and go to the next page on Google to search it, which means they're getting less clicks, which means the advertisers, the ones that are supporting the conservative movements, are getting less exposure, which means that could potentially hurt or harm or affect the business. Breitbart.com or Fox News or Red Zone or some of these other conservative outlets that may already be a little bit smaller because they're a more fringe type of media outlet, not necessarily bad, but on fringe that's not necessarily a mainstream news source. So they're already a little bit on the fringe end, and then you end up putting them on the back of the table when it comes to Google actually giving that response for you to click on it. Now all of a sudden they're way back in and they're getting less hits, and then the advertisers start saying, look, I'm paying you, but I'm not getting a heck of a lot of exposure. That's what marketing and advertising is. So it goes back to the money financially, and now we start seeing more of a case for a lawsuit of saying, wait a second, you're openly and purposefully trying to limit my exposure of my website and getting paid for the number of clicks, and you're openly supporting one business over another. That's not okay. And now we get to start to see some of the opportunities for lawsuits beginning if that's actually happening. So in that sense, I do support the fact of us fighting it through the government and trying to fight it through the court system to try and stop some of this madness and craziness that's actually happening. If it wasn't involved with the money and it was just them doing it because they felt like doing that, then fine. Admit it that you're a progressive company. Admit it that you don't like conservatives, and we'll find another source. But when you start involving the money and they're openly trying to attack some of these, then you start seeing a whole other realm of what's right and what's not okay and what we have to fight and what we have to stop. So appreciate her coming on the show, and very much so. This is your show. As always, it's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. There's never enough of that in the world today. The Voice of Reason will be back tomorrow for a Tuesday, starting off your day. Have a great Monday, everybody.